The house that learned our voices. I'm not telling this story because I think the house was haunted, in the movie sense. I'm telling it because I still have the files. And because a place shouldn't be able to learn you that fast. It started on March 3rd, the day my girlfriend Maya and I closed on a house we could barely afford, except the price was suspiciously low. It was a 2-story place near Lake Mercer, about 40 minutes from the nearest town with more than a gas station. White siding, a shallow porch, and a detached garage that leaned a little like it was tired. The listing said, "Estates sale, bank-owned, sold as is." The realtor said the usual. The previous owner passed away. No family nearby. That was all. We weren't trying to be brave. We were trying to be smart. We moved in with a borrowed truck at 4:18 p.m. It was still bright outside, but the air had that cold water smell that comes off lakes in early spring. Our dog, Milo, wouldn't step onto the porch at first. He put his front paws up, sniffed, then backed down like the boards were hot. Maya laughed and said, "He's dramatic." But she kept her keys tight in her fist, like people do without realizing. At 6:02 p.m., while we were stacking boxes in the living room, I noticed something that made no sense. The house was quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Pressed quiet, like the air was padded. We had the front door open. I could see the driveway, the trees, the lake through gaps in the branches. Still no birds. No wind in the leaves. Just us and our footsteps. At 7:11 p.m., the first weird thing happened. We were in the kitchen arguing about where to put the microwave when we heard our names, both of them, spoken clearly from upstairs. Not a whisper. Not a creak that could have been words. A voice above us saying, "Evan! Maya!" I froze with the microwave halfway off the counter. Maya's face went blank, the way it does when you're waiting for your brain to decide if it's misfiring. I said, "Was that your phone?" She held up her phone. Screen dark. Milo started barking at the staircase, low and angry, like he didn't want to go closer. I did anyway. I went up 2 steps and called, "Hello?" Nothing. I checked the hallway. The spare bedroom. The tiny bathroom. The closet. Empty. When I came back down, Maya was standing in the kitchen with both hands on the counter, like she needed it to keep her steady. She said, "It sounded like someone who knows us." That night we kept every light on. At 11:37 p.m., I checked the locks twice, then 3 times, because that's what you do when you feel stupid for being nervous. We had no curtains yet, so the windows were dark mirrors. I remember thinking, this is fine. It's just an old house. At 12:08 a.m., Milo began whining at the front door. Not scratching to go out. Whining like he wanted to leave. I reached for the handle, and for a second I didn't. Because I suddenly noticed something small and wrong. There was a faint smell of cigarette smoke in the entryway. Either of us smoked. The house had been empty for months. I opened the door anyway. Cold air rushed in. And the smell disappeared immediately, like it had been trapped inside with us. Nothing was on the porch. The driveway was empty. But our porch light was off. I knew I hadn't turned it off. I turned it back on and stared into the dark until my eyes watered from the cold. Then I shut the door and locked it. At 2:46 a.m., I woke up to the sound of a phone ringing. Old-fashioned ringing. Not a cell phone. A landline ring. The problem was, we didn't have a landline. The house didn't even have a phone connected. The ring was coming from downstairs, from the kitchen. Maya sat up, hair in her face, and whispered, "What is that?" Milo launched off the bed and ran down the stairs, barking like his throat hurt. The ringing stopped. I grabbed my flashlight and went down anyway, because I couldn't help it. The kitchen was exactly the same as we'd left it. Boxes. Tools. The microwave still not unpacked. But on the wall near the back door was a small plate with an old phone jack. Next to it was a yellowed label someone had written on in thin marker. It said, "Line 2, do not use." Maya came down behind me, barefoot, and read it over my shoulder. She said, "That wasn't there earlier." I wanted to tell her it had always been there. But I couldn't. Because I'd been staring at that wall for hours while we unpacked. And I would have noticed that label. We didn't sleep after that. The next day, March 4th, we did what rational people do. We blamed our nerves. We blamed the move. We joked about a raccoon in the attic. Around noon, we laughed about the ghost phone, while we bought cheap curtains and a new deadbolt. But the house didn't stop. At 3:23 p.m., I set up our doorbell camera. It faced the porch and the driveway. At 6:05 p.m., Maya texted me from the upstairs bedroom. "Did you come upstairs?" I replied. "No. I'm in the garage." She texted. "I just heard you in the hallway. Like your footsteps." I started typing. "It's an old house." Then I deleted it, because it sounded like something you say when you don't want to admit you're scared. At 6:19 p.m., Milo refused to go up the stairs. He stood at the first step and stared at the landing like something was waiting there. His ears were pinned back. His tail was low. Maya tried treats. He wouldn't move. So I went first, slowly, talking to him the way you talk to a dog when you're also talking to yourself. Halfway up, I felt something I still can't explain in a clean sentence. It felt like the air above the stairs was warmer. Not from a vent. Not from sunlight. Warmer like a body. I reached the landing and turned left into the hallway. And my own voice came out of the spare room. Quiet, conversational, like someone on a phone call. It was me saying, "Yeah, I'll grab it. Just give me a second." The exact words I'd said to Maya earlier when she asked for tape. Same tone. Same rhythm. Not similar. Identical. I stepped into the spare room and the voice stopped instantly. No speaker. No phone. No laptop. Just a bare floor and a stack of boxes. Maya watched me from the stairs, pale and stiff, like she was ready to run. I didn't tell her what I heard. I didn't want to make it real by saying it out loud. But that night, at 9:41 p.m., it got real anyway. The doorbell camera sent a motion notification. I opened the app and saw the porch. Empty. Then the audio waveform spiked, hard. A man's voice spoke right into the microphone, close enough that you could hear breath. He said, "Let me in." Maya heard it too because the sound came from my phone's speaker. She snatched the phone from my hand and replayed it. Once. Twice. 3 times. On the 4th replay, the clip didn't sound the same. The words were still there, but the voice wasn't. It was Maya. Her exact voice, tight, annoyed, saying, "Evan, let me in." Maya stared at me like she was trying to catch me in a prank. I said, "I didn't do that." She whispered, "That's me." We went outside together with a flashlight, even though I knew how dumb that was, because we needed the porch to be normal. There were no footprints. No car. No person hiding behind the porch column. Just the lake smell and the cold. But when I looked at the door frame, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The new deadbolt we installed that morning was turned. Not unlocked. Turned so the bolt was halfway out. Like someone had started it from the inside and stopped. We went back in and I checked every window. Every lock. The basement door. I found the basement door chain unhooked. We chained it the first night because the basement gave me a bad feeling, like it didn't want visitors. Maya said, "Maybe you forgot." I didn't answer because I knew I hadn't. At 11:56 p.m., we decided to leave. Not tomorrow. Not after we talked to someone. Right then. We threw clothes in a bag, grabbed Milo's leash, and started pulling boxes away from the front door. That's when we heard it again. Upstairs. Both our names spoken softly, like someone standing at the top step. Evan. Maya. But this time the voices overlapped, like two recordings played out of sync. Maya didn't look up. She didn't even blink. She just said very flat, "Don't answer it." We didn't. We got into the car at 12:14 a.m. and drove to a motel near the highway. The whole drive, Milo stared out the back window and growled at the darkness behind us. At 12:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with another doorbell notification. I opened it. The porch was lit. Empty. Then the image jolted, like the camera housing had been tapped with a fingertip. The audio spiked. And my own voice, my own tired, normal voice, said, "It's okay. We're leaving now." I felt cold all the way through. Because those were the words I whispered to Maya in the car. Not near the porch. Not near the doorbell. Not near anything that should have heard me. In the motel room, Maya sat on the bed and stared at the wall. She said, "How did it get that?" I didn't have a good answer. So I did the only thing that made sense. I checked our phone settings. Checked our cloud. Checked the doorbell app permissions. Nothing unusual. No shared accounts. No unknown devices logged in. Then I checked the house router logs through the router's admin app, because I'd set it up under my email during the move. And I saw a device listed that wasn't ours. It had connected at 11:58 p.m., right after we decided to leave. The device name wasn't random numbers. It was a word. A label. It said, Line 2. I unplugged my phone from the charger and held it like it was something that could bite me. The next morning, March 5th, we went back in daylight with Maya's brother, who's the kind of guy who laughs at everything. We brought tools. A bat. A new lock set. He walked through the house like he owned it. "See?" he said. "It's just a creepy old place. It's got history." He opened the basement door and said, "I'll check down there." Milo wouldn't even step into the entryway. He planted himself on the porch and shook. Maya grabbed my sleeve and said quietly, "Don't let him go alone." So I went with her brother. The basement wasn't finished, just concrete walls and old shelves. But in the far corner, behind a stack of warped boards, there was a small area of newer concrete. A patch. Like someone had sealed something. Above it, bolted to a beam, was an old landline phone. Not plugged into the wall. Not connected to anything. Just hanging there, dusty, like a prop someone forgot to remove. And taped to the phone was another yellowed label. Same handwriting as the one upstairs. Line 2, listen only. Her brother laughed once, then stopped laughing. Because the phone was off the hook. And from the receiver, very faintly, came the sound of breathing. Not static. Breathing. Maya's brother set the receiver back like it was hot and said, "Okay." Nope. We left the house fully packed that afternoon. We didn't argue about money. We didn't argue about pride. We didn't argue about how stupid it looked to walk away from a deal. We walked away because the house was collecting us in pieces, our words, our routines, our voices, and playing them back like it owned them. A week later, the realtor called and said the bank was confused because we'd never filed the correct paperwork to surrender the keys. I told her I'd drop them off. She paused and said, "You mean the extra set?" I said, "What extra set?" She said, "The set you returned yesterday." I drove straight to her office. She pulled out an envelope with my name on it. Inside were 2 keys on a ring, and a sticky note in thin marker, the same handwriting as the labels. It said, "You can't leave until you say goodbye." At the bottom of the note, in a different ink, was one last line. It was written in my handwriting, and it said, "It's okay. We're leaving now."